Welcome to the DDT Archives. I am Chris. With me, as always, is my co-host, Greg. Greg, what's going on, man?
What's up, dude?
Not a whole lot. Another day in quarantine. But we got a real special guest in our lounge today. I am super excited. I'm going to give him his own nickname on my own because he is the Suplex King of Colorado.
Oh, shit.
He is one half of the Wild Cards. He is a member of Strictly Business, which, for the record, has the greatest track jackets ever. The NWA needs to put them on the merch stand so I can get one. Royce Isaacs, how are you, Royce?
I'm lovely, man. I need to have you compliment me every time I do something because that felt lovely. That was a legitimate. I'm not sure if the audio came through, but I legitimately went, "Oh shit!" After you called me the Suplex King of Colorado, I was like, "This should definitely just be like." That's just my reaction. I appreciate that, man. I'm doing well.
Listen, we're big fans, man, and we appreciate that you would take the time to talk to us.
And
dude, absolutely.
And the audio came through. Don't worry.
Oh yeah,
we're good.
Definitely got it. Definitely got it.
I'm just sad that the fans missed. I just chugged a muscle milk. It would have been really good audio if we would have just recorded the gulps.
We may have that too.
Well, you guys went through just me trying to get home for 10 minutes, taking wrong turns. You guys just sitting there patiently like pros.
I mean, listen, we figured we were getting ribbed a little bit. We were being welcomed to the family. I'm good with that.
That's how, true heel to the end.
Exactly.
I wish I did like hit record. I hit record right after you did like the old school Pepsi commercial. Like, I'm mad I missed that.
Hell yeah.
So, like we told you, we try to do things a little different, and I know I clearly inspired you to create your own true crime podcast. Tell us about that love, man.
Man, I'm not sure exactly when it started. I just know that even going back to the days of like when I was in, like middle school and like high school, it was just something that always interests me, and I would always like try to figure out stuff about serial killers and the occult and whatever, like during my free time, during my study time that I was probably supposed to be doing my homework and whatever. Like I was just always, it was something that for whatever reason caught my fancy, and I kind of just always had it in the back of my mind to do something like this for a while. I guess I've meant to and haven't done it, but I think if there is a silver lining to the quarantine, a lot of people are kind of like, oh, this is my time. If I'm going to do something like this that maybe takes a big time investment that you would need, or that you would, you're at home and you're like, how can I create content, do something different? It just seemed like a really good fit for me. Because like I can tell you, we already recorded the first episode. The first episode is called Anomalia, anomaly in Greek, or in Latin, excuse me. And the first episode's on Bible John. It didn't feel like working, you know what I mean? Like I was like, oh, this is fun doing all the studying up for it and taking notes. Like it just felt natural. It felt easy. It felt fun. So like if that's what I can do every week, then I'm all the way down with it. You know what I mean? Because it's like wrestling for a job. You know what I mean? It's fun. It's not a job.
Exactly. If you enjoy what you're doing, it's never working.
Yeah, exactly. If I can just keep doing things that I enjoy constantly, then I can work the most. And you know what I mean? It's like I'm working out and I'm loving it. I'm wrestling, I'm loving it. I'm doing true crime stuff, I'm loving it. Like I'm working a bunch, but I don't really feel like I'm working,
Absolutely. What are some of those stories that you look forward to telling people?
Like I said, our first episode right now is Bible John. Without giving away too much, because we haven't even recorded the second episode. I know the second episode for sure is going to be on it's not the main branch, but an off branch of Scientology that gets really, really weird at the end. Like it really kind of, even for a cult, kind of takes a left turn. There's a few others. We have a whole list of things in mind. There's some lesser known serial killers. I think both Maureen and myself, Maureen and Tracy, my co-host, both of us went out of our way to try not, like, we don't need another podcast that does Bundy. There's like a million that have already done that. We're trying to kind of find some people that are off the beaten path. So for example, one of the people that we're looking at, I won't give away the name. Some people probably will know him if they're really geeked out on this shit like I am. But he's I believe the youngest convicted serial killer in America. Like he was youngest at his time of conviction. So we'll probably be doing him, I want to say, in the first month or two. And there's a few other subjects, but I don't want to give away too much of the ammo, as you can kind of tell. But we have a pretty, I mean, I guess the sad but also good thing about it is there's always new subject matter coming out, little by little.
Now, a little birdie named Heather Monroe told me that you have an interest in what was it, Crime and Sports, which is one of my absolute favorite podcasts.
Crime and Sports is my favorite podcast. First of all, it was Heather's birthday like 2 weeks ago, maybe. So happy late birthday to her. Shout out to Heather Monroe, you the realist. I've loved Crime and Sports. Like Crime and Sports has been my favorite podcast for a while now. And I actually got the honor of I wrestled in Arizona like maybe a year and a half ago, and Jimmy Westman came to the show and he watched, and then like we became friendly afterwards, texted a little bit, and we ended up like hanging out a little bit in LA, like when they were here for last year for their tour and stuff like that, I want to say. So like we still every once in a while we'll text and stay in touch. Like Jimmy's dope, man. It's one of those things I feel like I don't know, like it's like cool to meet. Like I feel like when you're in wrestling, like, I don't really, even being in LA, I don't like really mark out a ton for like celebrities unless they're really like, oh, like this is like a big deal celebrity. But when it comes to something like a podcast, funnily enough, just because you have someone in your house for hours every week and you're like listening to their voice, you kind of almost have that like, oh my God, like I'm friends with Jimmy Westman, and he's like, dude, like I'm friends with Royce Isaacs. I'm like, this is kind of cool. But Jimmy's dope, man. I love that podcast. I'm actually in the middle of the newest episode just dropped.
Yeah.
So I'm in the middle of that right now.
The wrestling ones are fucking hilarious.
Yeah, man, they're pretty off the wall. Actually, I've gotten mentioned I think in 2 episodes now. Not to toot my own horn, but two. Shout out to Crime and Sports. That's a dope podcast.
Definitely is. So now you're a football guy, and you played at Cornell College, correct?
Yes, sir.
So I'm going to ask this because I went to Hartford and would like to say it quick and say I went to Harvard. Do you, when you're in the Northeast, just sell that you went to the Cornell University?
No. So a lot of people just kind of assume that, and I like at first it was like, oh, like the first time I heard that, I'm like, no, it's different. It's Iowa. Eventually, I was just like, I'll just let people think that I'm a freaking genius, because like it doesn't really, like I can either have this like 45-second conversation that leaves us in a worse place than when we started, or I can just be like, yeah, that's right, I am a freaking doctor. It's great. Yeah, that's how I ended up in spandex fighting my friends for hot dog money.
Only if they're dirty weird dogs from New York, though.
Those are the best ones. Like the dirty New York street dogs are the best hot dogs by far.
Yeah,
without a doubt.
It's hard to.
There's nothing better than a drunken night at Grace Papaya.
Like,
yeah.
But even then, it's just like a drunken night anywhere, and then it's just, you stop off for some street meat. Like my cousin, he's like originally from Long Island, but he lives out in California now. And when he's home, like if we're walking around the city all hammered, it's like it's always he has to go to like a cart. And doesn't matter. It can be on a stick in a pita. It doesn't matter. He's got to have some street meat because it's the only way to go.
Yeah, man. Boys got to eat. Boys got to have his dinner.
I know, right?
It's the carts are in. I don't know how I haven't gotten sick off cart food. I teach in the Bronx, so the carts I hit up are the real carts.
Because it's all over.
Hey, you know what? Yeah, all 3 of us have had cart meat and cart food. And right now, all 3 of us are healthy. So I think the preliminary, no one try this, but I think it might help with, COVID or whatever if you eat dirty New York street dogs.
As the certified food safety specialist in the room right now, I would eat out of those carts more than anything because they're always hot.
Yeah.
Like smoke coming out of them. Everything's overcooked.
Yep.
You don't have to worry about that. Everything is like held at a good temperature, and there's not a lot of product, so you don't have to worry about like too much things going on. So yeah, those things are totally safe.
Yeah, and you just like
what animal the meat came from may not be that. I don't want to know, but I mean anything else is perfect. Like as far as temperature goes, it's fine.
Dude. But the good thing is, you kind of you get some of that like it boosts your immune system when you have like the dirtier, like you have a street dog and then you just like dip it in some like dirty snow or something like that. Like you're not going to get a cold for 3 weeks or 3 years.
I'm convinced that it's my life as like a restaurant manager that's why I never get sick because I'm just around gross people 24/7.
Your immune system looks like a freaking like jacked up. It's like the Mucinex bug, but they're like a jacked up bouncer guy. And you're just like, oh, okay, I'm not on the list.
I'm a Terminator. I have humanoid skin like on top of the skin like metal exoskeleton. Yeah. That's what it is.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit of wrestling, and then we'll go off into one of our fun tangents. So I'm a huge NWA guy from back in the day when I was like 3 years old in front of the TV. How did it feel to be a part of that Crockett Cup and being that wild card entry into the tournament?
Yeah, man. I mean, so obviously I was born in '89, so like my like era that I grew up in was the Attitude Era, but obviously as soon as I got into wrestling, I started to get into its history, and I gained a huge respect for the old studio tapings, and of course the NWA had some of the greatest champions in history come through during those times, and it's really, I don't know, it's been pretty crazy and kind of surreal still to like be a part of the, I guess, like rebirth or reawakening of that. Because I'd been wrestling for a while even before Crockett Cup had come along, but NWA hadn't been what it had been in the past, and it hadn't been what it is now for a while really. And then to see what Billy and Dave and like all the progress that we've made, all the team that's been part of it, it's been so much. I don't know. It's crazy how quickly things have come along, and like the respect on the name of the NWA has really come back, and to see like every time out we're trying bigger and badder things, and even before the Crockett Cup 2020 was canceled, it was like we were about to venture outside of GPB Studios. We were about to do our biggest show yet. Like like our ceiling was just every time kept getting higher and higher.
Oh, and it shows. I mean, I genuinely enjoy sitting back and watching it week after week. I never thought I'd find myself going to YouTube weekly, but it is one of the best shows in wrestling now. And I don't just say it because you're on. I love the 1 hour get in, get out show where it's just you have a couple of key storylines, great matches, in and out.
Yeah, man. I think especially like, I mean, I don't know. I can only have so much attention span. I don't think there's anything wrong with just doing an hour, like crash, bang, boom. Obviously, the other places have bigger locker rooms where they may need more time and whatever. But we're in an era where like everyone's pretty ADD in general, where it's not the worst thing in the world just to like the longer you like. For example, we'll all watch 7 hours of Netflix straight, but we're going to watch 7 episodes of something. If a movie came out and it was 7 hours, it took me 3 months to watch The freaking Irishman. And I'm like a really big Scorsese fan because I was just like, dude, like committing to saying I am going to do 3.5 right now is a lot. But like, I'll go watch 4 hours of Criminal Minds right now. No problem. Like it's whatever. So it's really just like the commitment of it. Yeah, it's a classic. 12 seasons, and it's on Netflix. So it's like if you really need quarantine stuff to kill your time, perfect. Anywho's the deal is, I feel like if you just kind of do that hour, people make that commitment to either go, okay, I want to watch another hour, or that's all I can do today. Boom, it's easy. It's no real commitment. I like that. Like I think that works for me. I think even inside of that hour, not having any music, so like it's like boom. Match, boom, next promo, boom, next segment, vignette, boom, next match. Like there's no time for you to go, oh, I'm kind of bored. I'm gonna go like check my phone now or whatever. That you'd usually get like 30 seconds or a minute of that when someone's doing their entrance or whatever, you know?
Yeah, that's how I feel about, on top of, NWA is MLW is the same way. It is just, bing, bang, boom, out in an hour. And just like you said, like that formula, you know what you're going to get. You know you're going to get good promos. You know you're going to get fun stuff. You know you're going to get great matches. And it's not taking up. And this is coming from a guy, we grew up on 3-hour nitros and they were like, it was excruciating sometimes. And it's just like you have to trudge through the crap to get through the good stuff. I'd rather have a show that's just, one solid hour of good programming than filler. Oh, now we're up to a great match and I'm already bored.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, shout out! You brought MLW. Shout out to Hammerstone. That's my boy. I would definitely love to. The normal podcast question of dream match. I guess that would be a good one. Would be me versus Hammerstone. But you guys are not going to ask that because we're asking weird questions.
I'm not going to ask that.
I've never asked that in my life.
We have a no-no. We have a no-no list of questions we'd ask on this podcast, and that is on the top.
It's funny, but the one time on a podcast I don't have to answer it, I chose to answer it. So there you go.
I mean, that was by your own volition. It was not coming.
I know this is not a video podcast, but there's no gun to my head. I chose to do this. I'm fully responsible. I'm not drunk or anything.
I will post them online later, my questions, and you will see it is not there.
It's not there.
I believe you.
I had a brief Twitter interaction with Hammerstone last night. That's funny you mentioned it.
Yeah, man.
Like, we invited him. I think he left me on request ignore.
Sounds like Alexander right now.
Yeah.
So let's talk comparisons of locker rooms. So obviously you played college football. You're in a college football locker room, and that's the only thing that I can kind of relate to because I coached college football for the last couple of years.
Yeah.
How does the camaraderie of that locker room correspond with the wrestling locker room?
It's similar because like it's still an athletic endeavor. I think there's big differences though in terms of like mindset and mentality, all that stuff. I would say like obviously football being a team sport versus wrestling is individual. Even if you have a team, it's like just your team of two. You're never going to be concerned with 54 other people or whatever kind of thing. In some ways it's good because I feel like there's less of that pressure to like prove yourself, and like there's a huge pressure in wrestling to prove yourself in terms of like out there on your stage, like you need to prove yourself to the fans, but like there's less like we're all grown-ups and we're all in the same spot. So I feel like there's less of a like bullying, prove yourself. Like in high school, it's your entire identity. But if you can fit in or whatever, it's like wrestling is just like, okay, cool. We're all adults. We pay bills, whatever. Like now, are you any good in the ring? I mean, it's just some people in wrestling haven't ever really been in a football locker room. So maybe they don't like have the same kind of like pump up kind of stuff that you do or whatever. Like there's definitely like a wider array, I think, of personality wise, I guess personality types in a pro wrestling locker room, but also like you don't really have to, like, I'm not going to third period social studies class with any of my other wrestlers. So like, you don't also have to be friendly with anyone you don't really want to be. You don't have to be around anyone. Like people get like just as much as like a high school is cliquish, a pro wrestling locker room is going to be cliquish because everyone's only going to get kind of, you're not going to deal with someone that you don't have to deal with, especially if you're on the indies and you're not making a ton of money. Why are you going to deal with some jerk that you don't even want to, okay, cool. Like we're on the same show together or whatever. That's great. But like, you know what I mean? Like versus high school, like, yeah, I'm going to have to cheat off your history test. So
why has it got to be history? I'm a history teacher.
That or math is the place to cheat. Obviously that's where everyone's trying to cheat.
I mean, I wish my kids would cheat. My kids would have better grades if they did. It's always cheating on history. I mean, you only have to learn it once. If you remember it, you have it forever. At least
That is
that's what I
true.
tell my
Unless
kids.
you get like a concussion, then you could lose it probably.
That's fair. That is fair. CTE is a real thing. I actually got to travel around the country teaching about with USA football. I was going around the country teaching concussion management and all that good stuff. So you don't have to convince me of that one.
And
So-
yeah, I mean, I'm glad that I loved football and I'm glad I played, but I'm also kind of glad like I got out when I did because it was like the last generation of like I mean, we all knew it wasn't good for our heads, but like we didn't have to like have it quite so blatantly like shoved in our faces where it was like, okay, like I know this is a bad risk, but also I don't know, it wasn't quite as like, oh, my mortality is in front of me like it is now.
Yeah, I was a little bit ahead of you. I'm about 9 years older than you. And I mean, we used to literally headbutt each other on the sidelines just to get excited.
Dude, you know, of course, man.
Ridiculous. Looking at it now, I'm like, so I concussed myself how many times just for shits and giggles? You know? But hey, good things come out of the football locker room. I still, before we podcast, I listen to Offspring every time.
Dude. I feel like you can also just tell like what I don't know, it's funny, like every generation has like their playlist of like football pump up songs that they like all like everyone that is my age listened to the same basically the same CD, but it's all a mix of different stuff. I'm like, how did you have these 7 songs? Because those were the 7 like pump up. Like there was the Nelly Heart of a Champion song. Yeah. Everyone that was my age like listened to before the football game. Like there's like every generation has its pump up songs.
Twisted Sister, Guns N' Roses, Metallica, and then Thunderstruck on the way out was always it.
Oh, there you go. Oh, dude, hardcore.
Yeah. It was, you know, now if we had actually gone out on the field and won, it would have been even better. I won 4 games in 4 years of high school.
That's rough, brother.
Builds character is what I like to go with.
Your character is through the roof, my friend.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So the reason I asked the camaraderie question, you posted a picture earlier today on Twitter and Instagram with Bateman, and it clearly was after your ladder or after the match, the bull rope match.
Bull rope, yeah.
How awesome is it to know that you put on a spectacular performance and then you get to go back, and I'm assuming the two of you are real close friends based on that photo.
Yeah. So, I mean, that I guess to come back to your earlier question about like that camaraderie, you do get it with certain people. Like there are the few people that you do kind of get close with that, you know, if you're on the road a lot together, you have a lot of physical matches, you know, like shout out to my other tag team partner, Jarrell Nelson, just had his birthday, and we've shed a lot of blood, sweat, and tears together. And it's like he's one of my tightest, closest friends in the world. And it's like the same kind of thing where like you just have these memories together, and it just makes you really, really close. Like obviously, me and Bateman, to get back to Bateman, we didn't like that. That's the first that picture's been seen because I didn't want to at the time shit on our feud and everything because like publicly we didn't like each other and whatever, but like that's one of my favorite pictures. I'm really glad actually I got to post that today because it's one of my favorite pictures. If anyone hasn't seen it, just the two of us bleeding after our match, with arm around each other, just kind of having a chat. But I mean, there's something about like I don't know, just like we both bled a lot. So just having that kind of physical interaction, that back and forth storytelling with a crowd, you know, responding and just feeling like, man, we like laid it all out there. There's something really exhilarating. And Bateman and I have been close. We were close before that, but I think that also like certainly helped. Like some of my closest friends, Marty the Moth is another good one that I've had a lot of really physical matches with that like afterwards you just get this kind of like appreciation for like, man, like we really like we did something cool there, kind of, you know.
Definitely. I mean, that match was incredible. Like when you were bleeding literally down your entire chest, I was going, did you hit an artery? Because it was good. That was like old school Flair Crimson Mask.
I love that match. That's maybe my favorite match, a singles match, anyways, that I've been in. And if anyone hasn't seen it, I recommend it. I would love it. I would appreciate it if you watch. If not, whatever. I'll never know about it. But
you can find it on Fight TV on Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. It is there. That's where I saw it the other night.
It's on YouTube separate, actually, in full color and everything too. They have Royce Isaacs versus Bateman bull rope match, like just only that in full color.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, what was it like working the Rock and Roll Express? Do they still have that crazy energy?
Yeah, I think that's one of those things that never really goes away because those guys are still. I mean, yeah, it's kind of wild to think that. Like I was watching them when I was younger, and they're still going at it at such a high level, and I think really delivering too. Like, it's not just like, oh well, they're being put in these positions. Like the Rock and Roll Express are still having really good matches, and fans seem to really, really love it too. Like it's been such a good thing. I feel like from both sides, like the interaction between them having great matches and the fans really lapping it up. It's been it's not just like, oh, well, this is like a good Rock and Roll Express run for their age. It's like, no, this is just like a really good Rock and Roll Express run. Like they're doing some really good work.
Definitely enjoy any opportunity I get to see the two of them. I mean, as a little kid, you couldn't help but be drawn to them with the flashy colors and the bandanas everywhere. They were, still are great. So you mentioned Criminal Minds, so we're going to get back off wrestling. When you watch Criminal Minds, do you watch it from the perspective of the serial killer or do you watch it from the perspective of the FBI?
With Criminal Minds specifically, I kind of almost use it as like when I'm done with like my work for the day, just to turn my brain off. So I try not to like, if there's like a little clue and I'm like, oh, I bet at the end of the episode they come back and it's this person, or like I bet this is a big thing, I won't ignore it and I'll think about it and explore the possibility. But honestly, like that show is almost like, even though it's not a guilty pleasure show, I almost watch it like a guilty pleasure show where I'm like, all right, cool, I'm just gonna like zone out and let these guys kind of tell this story and whatever. And it always, I mean, honestly, I'm not great anyways at like, I'm not the guy that 20 minutes into a movie, I'm like, oh, that's the killer or whatever. Like, I don't just figure out the twist. I'm really proud of myself whenever, like, the 3 times in my life I have seen a twist coming in a movie. I'm really, really proud of myself, but generally that's not the case.
Gotcha. I love Criminal Minds. It's probably one of the few shows I've watched every episode of. And I couldn't wait every Wednesday. I was sad that it ended this year.
Yeah. Pour some out.
Who's your favorite character on it?
Reed, probably.
Me too. His growth as a character was incredible. If you go back and watch the first season and then the end of it, wow, it's unreal.
Oh yeah.
Greg, jump into the conversation, man.
You guys are doing a great job talking about like football and Criminal Minds. Yeah, I'm a big Joe Montana guy myself, so it's good stuff right there. But
see, this is role reversal because our last 3 guests love things that I didn't know anything about. So, Greg was talking Transformers and Disney World, and I'm going, okay, I need to talk about something.
That just shows you weren't listening. That just shows you weren't listening because I don't remember ever talking about Transformers to anybody.
Avengers, maybe, same shit.
That's completely different shit.
Remember when Captain America turned into a freaking car?
What about that General United States? That's a guy, right? No, stop.
Yeah, he was the one that's the Hummer, right? Yeah. He's the blue Hummer.
Listen, I acknowledge my shortcomings, and comic books are my shortcomings.
It's fine. Like, listen, I'm not that. I don't have that ego where, like, on my podcast, I can ride in the back seat and just jump in when I can. Like, I don't care, man. Like, we're good. This is fun. Like, it's great hearing you guys talk about stuff. playing coaching football. Know nothing about that. Criminal Minds, I've seen a handful of episodes, so like I can't really.
Not your wheelhouse.
It is like it's a show like I wish I got into because it's totally like something I'd be into. I just never got there. There's 100 shows like that.
Dude, for real. I haven't watched a single episode of Game of Thrones or Walking Dead or Sons of Anarchy, so I'm like...
And out of the three, Sons of Anarchy is the better of the three.
Sons is worth
watching.
Okay. My wife got that true crime component to
it.
My wife actually enjoy that.
My wife loved that show, and she doesn't like anything. I hated
Game of Thrones.
Yeah,
I used to watch it to make my wife happy, but it is the fucking worst. Is it in the past? Is it in the future? I don't know. It's just awful.
Like that's the thing is like I've never watched The Office, and I'm tired of people telling me how good it is. Like that's one of those things. Like, do you ever get that too? Where like people will tell you, and like you travel around a lot, you meet a lot of people, like they're constantly telling you how good something is, and you're just like, I'm not watching it because of that.
Yeah, there's definitely certain shows where like I haven't watched them because they've been like so recommended to me, but it also depends on who. Like I have like my core like really tight friends that if they're like, no, like I know you and I promise you'll like this. If I get a couple of those, like all right, cool. But if like there's those like friends that you're like, yeah, you're the homie, but like I don't know about your opinion on stuff, and you get like a few of those recommendations, you're like, I'm definitely like, oh, all you guys have are my friends, but you have terrible taste and stuff. There's no way. Like this is putting it on my firmly do not watch list now.
Yeah, I named that like back in the day. I named it like the Pink Floyd syndrome for me personally because it was just like when we were in high school and getting into like all this stuff and like people kept telling like weirdo music and things, and people like I was bombarded with people telling me how great Pink Floyd was, and I'm just like, please stop. I can't do it. And it's like. And that has grown to like the like stuff like The Office now and Game of Thrones, where it's just like you're gonna tell me, if it's more than 10 people telling me how great something is, I can't even deal with it. I can't talk to you right now. Like I'm not watching it.
You didn't even like Tiger King.
I couldn't get past the third episode because right after that, like my wife left, so I really couldn't. It's a long story. It's not bad though. It's all good. It's not like horrible. No, it's fine. But like right after that, she left. So like we don't watch TV together late at night anymore.
Yeah,
like it is what it is.
That is great trashy TV though.
Yeah, I get it, but
it's car crash TV.
But that's the thing. It's
away. It's so bad. It's good.
It wasn't. But here was my problem with that. It wasn't that it wasn't like interesting and weird. It's that everybody in it. I gotta be invested in somebody and like. Whether it's like a true crime documentary, it's like I'm not rooting for the killer, but if I'm like, how do they figure this out? It's the cops, it's the killer or something like that. It gets you in there. All of those people on that show annoyed the shit out of me. So why am I going to keep watching it? They're all freaking psychopaths. Why am I going to...
I get what you mean.
Like
I get what you mean. Like where you need like someone that you can like be like, all right, this is...
Yeah.
I liked certain characters in Tiger King, so I didn't feel that way, but there's certain things I've like Midsummer to me, the movie, everyone raved about it as a horror movie. I didn't like it for the same kind of reason where I was like, oh, I want all these people to die. I have no one that like I have a vested interest in like making it out of this. Like it's hard sometimes.
So thank you. So you get what I'm saying. It's like for me personally, I gotta be like, all right, who's my guy in this that's really hooking me? And it never came around. So I just kind of let it go.
It's hard. Yeah. It's really hard. I will say actually there are a few exceptions probably in movie and TV history where like it's all shitty people and you're like, oh, this is actually quite enjoyable. But usually it's something kind of weird where like they all have to get their comeuppance and it's poetic. And there still has to almost be someone that's reaping the benefit. But it's similar to actually, if we want to bring it back to wrestling, like a heel versus heel match. That's why that's like the least popular match. Like you'll see bad guy, good guy. You'll see occasionally, if they have to, like a good guy, and you can still have both people be good guys effectively. It's hard to do bad guy, because usually if you're going to cheer when someone gets hurt, that means you're cheering for someone, not just cheering against the other person. So like similar kind of thing where you usually need someone to at least kind of root for, even if it's like they both kind of suck. I kind of like this guy or relate to this guy a little more. Same thing in entertainment, other forms of entertainment and wrestling.
Well, that's why wrestling's to me, the purest form of entertainment, because it has everything. It's like every kind of entertainment you can think of, whether it's comedy, drama, action, suspense, thrills. You throw it in a blender. That's what wrestling is, and that's how I always describe wrestling to people that just don't get it. You know?
Sure. Totally.
But
have there been, because obviously you've worked in promotions where TV is important, championship wrestling from Hollywood, you're on TV more than the audience there. Same thing with the NWA. Have there been storylines that you've done where you're just like, ooh, this is a little uncomfortable, but this is going to be really good?
I think it's, that happens. That does happen, especially, I mean, gosh, there's certain aspects in like the current stuff with like Mae Valentine that can be very like touchy, and like you have to be careful about how you portray yourself and how everything comes off. Like, obviously you want to ride like a fine line. Like, I don't know, just like when you're portraying like something like that publicly, like you never want to cross a certain line where maybe like certain words are lobbied at you or whatever, like, but you also still have to like fulfill your job of being, the antagonist, the person that they don't like or whatever, without, especially in like the current climate. And this isn't me being like, oh, like back in the day or complaining. I'm just saying like that it is something that we all have to be aware of, and that we have to like be conscientious of like, all right, how am I going to be a bad guy, but also not in a certain way where like people will actually think that, like Royce Isaacs is a bad guy. I don't want them to think that Isaac Hall is a scumbag or whatever. And how can I still do my job effectively and get that over? Like, especially I feel like things where it's either like, any kind of interaction between the sexes in general, not just like my own personal experience, but like if there's obviously any kind of physicality or even hinted at, like that's, like something you have to be really, really sensitive and tread lightly around, or anything that's just like, I mean, really, people can get offended about damn near anything anymore. But like, there are certain aspects of life that we all know, or angles, or in any entertainment or any storytelling, you're going to see certain things that are like, oh, this is definitely a touchy subject. I think the NWA does a really good job of still having like edgy storylines that aren't going over that, crossing that like imaginary line, whatever that line is. But there's also been plenty of companies that intentionally crossed that line, or were like, maybe that was almost like their shtick was that they would like be edgy like that. So,
see, that was me going for that, but I didn't clear it with you beforehand, and I wanted to ask it in a way that, in case you didn't want to discuss that one specifically, but that's exactly where I was going. Two minds think alike. What's been your favorite angle on anything that you've done?
I mean, favorite angle is really hard to say. It's usually just like enjoyable periods of time, like where there was just a lot of like good matches and work happening. I would say the entirety of my feud with Bateman this last year in Hollywood was really, really enjoyable. Obviously getting to do a run with Rock and Roll Express in 2019 was pretty special as well on the tag team tip. I honestly, it's fairly recent, but even like my stuff with Adrian Quest on Hollywood, where like he won the title and then it was dusty finish kind of dealio. Spoiler alert, if you're 6 months late on Hollywood, I don't know where you've been. Sorry. And like, there was like more depth to it, where it was like an impromptu thing, and then like him kind of coming back and getting screwed over, and that's led into his storyline. I've since left Hollywood, but like it's kind of been the catalyst for his next thing. So like that was kind of fun, especially because Adrian, I think, is someone that's really talented, and I think he's like that kind of next generation. So I'm happy to be like part of his lore and whatnot. But yeah, I don't know. I'm sure there's probably something that I'm completely like, oh yeah, obviously this would be like my favorite angle or anything or whatever. But got that afternoon blank out, unfortunately.
That's okay. I'll ask you another tough question that it's like the least favorite question that I ask. It's just a step below dream match of shitty questions to ask.
Come on, Greg, you're doing such a great job.
I know. No, it's fine. I'm not going to bring it down, but I am going to ask because we like our regular weekly show is a old school podcast. We talk old school wrestling and from the 80s, 90s, whatever. So is there like a particular, match or event or anything that you can go back to that you just could watch over and over just to pick you up if you're feeling down or just, bring your faith back to the world of wrestling?
See, that's tough because I don't know if there's like one match in particular. That the issue is sometimes like if you just wanted to, like if you wanted to like go into the depth of your sorrow and kind of wallow and get over it that way and feel good afterwards, like maybe you would want something like a Brett and Austin where it's going to get emotional and you're going to kind of get that cathartic, like, oh, he's like going for it at the end. And then like it might be like if you're just kind of like maybe it's like just a little like 2 o'clock, seasonal, you're not feeling great, like maybe something like you want like a Young Bucks PWG match where you can like completely just turn the brain off and enjoy like a crazy, like, oh my God, like keep topping. Like I feel like, for example, like the Young Bucks versus Frankie Kazarian and Chris Daniels from like PWG 2016 would be a great, like, you don't need any context. You just enjoy, like pop it in and enjoy it kind of match.
See, that's a great way that you answered that question to me because it's really like wrestling is so broad sometimes that it's like music. It depends what kind of mood you're in for the kind of match that you want to watch. And you kind of like have to look inside yourself and be like, what am I in the mood for today? Like, am I in the mood for like Attitude Era stuff or do I want to watch like grainy WCW from like 1988? Like it's
Absolutely. I can always pretty much watch some Attitude Era stuff. To be honest, like just as an era, I personally really enjoy it. And there's a lot of people that will be like, oh, like the work rate wasn't that good. And it's like, no, it was just different. They just had a different style, but like everyone looked like badasses. There was a lot of cool gimmicks. Everyone got camera time. They were a little rushed. Like in some of the matches, you could tell, oh, you guys got 3 minutes and you're getting your shit in and getting out or whatever. But for the most part, like people looked like badasses and they did cool stuff. And I remember all the angles. Like to this day, like there's still so many even just mid-carder angles that you're like, oh yeah, well, it's probably too edgy for me to say it in public over a podcast, whatever angle, you're thinking of from the Attitude Era, but you're like, I remember it. Like it's stuck in there. Like
you're thinking of Val Venus getting his dick cut off, aren't you?
Okay, so the first 2 things I thought of was that and the Mark Henry sexual chocolate run, and I was like, oh, I can't say. I was gonna say one of them, and I was like, nope, can't say that, and I was like, oh, can't say the other one. So I was like,
don't worry.
Oh, I guess I'll just go.
Don't worry. I was feeling it. No fear, man. I was feeling it. I got you.
Dude. No, I love the choppy is one of my favorite angles of all time, and it's so childish, and it's very 90s, and you couldn't do it today. But it was memorable, and like I don't know, all those guys I thought did a really good job. Obviously, performing that to make it something that my childhood brain still vividly remembers that, and I'm now 31 years old and repeatedly for a living get dropped on my head, and I still remember that. So,
but that's the beauty of that era too. And like you said, we're a couple years older than you, so we were like, think about the time when we went in high school in the fall of 1995 and graduated in the spring of 1999. So think about what our lives were like for wrestling in those years. Like it was the best. And like Chris and I went to we've been friends for like 35 years, like, but we went to different high schools. So I went to an all boys Catholic high school. If you didn't know what happened, so there was no girls to think you sucked for like liking wrestling or make fun of you. So we didn't care. Yeah. So it was like you walk into school on a Tuesday morning in homeroom and you didn't know what happened the night before on Raw or Nitro. You were an outcast. Yeah.
You're not the in kid.
No, you like it was like, what did you watch? What did you tape? What did you see? Did you see what happened there? Did you see what the NWO did? Did you see what Austin did? Like it was always like there. Yeah. So it's a great time to be like, because as we matured, so did the subject matter. We were kids with the Hogan era, teenagers where it got kind of corny, where everybody had like there was garbage men and everyone had jobs and shit. And then
Yeah,
you know,
you had real world jobs, and you're like, this is depressing.
yeah, like I don't want to be a pig farmer. Like I'm from New York. Like, it sucks. Like so. That's the thing I tweeted the other day. I was like, somebody tweeted about, we did a show recently about like In Your House in 1996. And I made the joke that like the poster had like the Godwins on it, Shawn Michaels and Diesel. And it was somebody commented on it. It was like, he's like, oh, this is like my childhood. And I was like, yeah, like where your heroes could be pig farmers, like a truck driver and a male stripper. And he didn't never fathomed on him that Shawn Michaels was a male stripper. I'm just like, wow.
He is the boy toy. Like, come on.
Yeah, like that was he wore chaps for Christ's sake. What did you think he was? And
who else has a fucking outfit made of mirrors? Like, you think that's just like the mailman or something? Like, come on, that's definitely Magic Mike.
Yeah, and like exactly. It's like, and like everybody had like a career, and it was just so it was so weird, and like it's such a weird, like that new generation is like, it's not the most enjoyable, but it's the most fascinating era when you see all that different weird crap that went on during that time.
Totally.
What was it like working with Scott Steiner?
Man, that was a dream come true. I'm a huge Scott Steiner fan. That's why I do the suplexes that I do. Him and Taz were like kind of my influence there. Ken Shamrock, but Steiner is like a huge hero for me. I bleached blonde hair for a long time, and he was kind of like the inspiration. Him and Dolph Ziggler were like the inspiration for that. So like Scott Steiner is a guy that I've always been a huge fan of. Steiner Brothers probably my favorite tag team. Like they're phenomenal. So that was like a dream come true to be able to like to tag with Scott Steiner. I loved it, man.
He's definitely one of our favorites. We got to see his re-debut in the WWE. And what was that, Survivor Series?
Survivor Series 02. We were there at the Garden that night.
Ballistic. It was incredible.
Wild.
It was awesome. Like,
it's hard not to, especially like he has a really good music for a surprise appearance or for like a return. You know, like 'cause you get that holler, you hear me in the woo woo woo, and you're like, oh fuck, it's happening kind of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah, like, and it's just so funny when you know how like the old school fans today will make fun of like the flippy shit, and like he was doing that crap at his size in the 80s and early 90s. Like you tell me like a standing, like the standing Frankensteiner, like just jumping on somebody's neck like and flipping over, like it's one of the craziest moves I've like still ever.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, he used to do he would have like a like he'd pick you up like a world's strongest slam and then just do like a fall away, but he would flip with you and like land on top of you and stuff. He domed himself all the time doing that, but man, that thing was money. The Steiner screwdriver is one of the coolest moves of all time. Like, yeah, no, Scott Steiner's dope, man.
What's it like working with so closely with Nick Aldis?
Man, that guy is such a leader. He's someone that's really had my back throughout the beginning stages of NWA and everything. And I'm really glad to have him in my corner. And it's cool that we get to, kind of be part of a team, be part of a faction now, as part of Strictly Business on NWA Power.
I just watched Carneyland before we started recording, and it was hilarious. I couldn't stop laughing. It was fantastic. Exactly what I needed from a non-wrestling show. But he just
man.
He
like
literally.
I think that's kind of the vibe we're going for. Yeah, with the Carneyland is like, like obviously we can't do the empty arena stuff, but at least if we can keep the fans entertained in some fashion, that's obviously not touching people and wrestling and whatnot. Then that's what we're trying to do now.
It was. I mean, his talking about podcasters. I went, God, I hope I'm not like that. He just went, oh, it was hilarious. I'm like, no, I don't ask that question. I'm safe. I don't ask that one. I'm safe. I'm going to reword that question. What is different about international wrestling than working within the States?
I don't know, man. Wrestling is wrestling. Like at the end of the day, I don't think it's that. Like you're not reinventing the wheel, certainly, but everyone has like their own style. I personally think that when you go international, like I like obviously incorporating things that you learn, a flair here and there, but you should still like be yourself. If someone brings you in, it's because they didn't expect you to do their version of wrestling the best. They expected you to do your version of wrestling the best, and that their fans would respond to this. So obviously, you can tailor your style to like if you have like a really indie crowd. Obviously, you want to do more, maybe some bigger, crazier stuff or whatever. Um, but I mean, at the end of the day, like good wrestling is good wrestling. Like I don't think like I've wrestled in Mexico City before, and like I'm not gonna go there and just do all lucha stuff just because I'm in Mexico City. Like I still want to be myself. Like I might throw an arm drag or two. I definitely am gonna try to base someone and make someone else look good in the lucha libre craft, so that I show my fellow workers that I can do all the advanced lucha. But like I'm not gonna just come out and do all of a sudden be a different person. Like they want to see something different anyways. They already have a million luchadors there that can do that style. Or like if I go to Japan, they don't need me to be, like a strong style guy. Like I can just wrestle like myself because they already have people that wrestle like their wrestlers. They need someone else. But I love the fact that I've gotten to go around and learn internationally and train at a few places and work with people in different countries, because to me that's really helped. Like I don't know, I love sponging. I love learning new techniques and different things that work, and kind of finding different folds that you can put into there. Like there's little like lucha reversals that I'll use to set up certain strikes or suplexes or whatever. So like it's always fun to kind of get those experiences. And I think that, man, like traveling internationally, when you're a wrestler and you travel internationally, you feel like hell yeah, like this is what it's supposed to feel like.
That's awesome.
I mean,
so we'll start winding down. What Eddie Kingston said something at the beginning of Carneyland today about wanting to do things because of the legacy that you leave. And I thought that was a real cool way to kind of end this today. When it's all said and done, what do you want Royce Isaacs to be remembered for?
I'm not exactly sure if there's a single thing that I'm like, this is what I want my legacy to be. I feel like that's one of those things that my path is just doing the best that I can, and I'll let everyone else kind of write the story for me and tell that legacy for me. I just want to be the best wrestler that I possibly can, and I want to perform for the most people. And I think with my performance and my abilities, I can, get people to remember me and remember my name. And hopefully I can train a lot of good wrestlers and get that next generation, so I can also build my legacy that way, kind of having that handprint on the next generation. And I don't know, man. I mean, I know it's not a very wrestler, like in terms of like the wrestling promo, you're supposed to, I'm the best and this is everything I'm going to do. But like legitimately, I really believe in myself. I think there's a lot of really amazing things I can accomplish. But like right now, in terms of mindset and where my head's at, it's like I keep my head down, I keep myself focused, and I let everyone else kind of write it down, because I'm too busy kind of forging my path and making that legacy.
It's an awesome answer, absolutely awesome answer. So why don't you plug everything that you do, because this should be a nice long list.
Oh yeah. So if you want to check me out, at Royce Isaacs on Twitter, at Royce Isaacs on Instagram. I got that new podcast, that new crime podcast, so please check that out. Anomalia, you can check that out at Anomalia Podcast on Twitter, Anomalia Podcast on Instagram. Like I said, the first episode should be out in the next week or two, and more details should be coming out very shortly on that. That's about it. I appreciate anyone that took the time to listen to this, and hopefully you enjoyed it and had a few chuckles. But you guys were a pleasure. Thanks for having me on, y'all. That was fun.
I appreciate you saying that, man.
Thank you very
we
much.
aim to please.
Thank you.
Oh yeah.
You can follow the show at DDT Archives on both Twitter and Instagram. You can follow me at Chris_DDTHSLB. And we're going to keep bringing you the best interviews, the best old school wrestling podcast that we can, because we only know one way to do it, and that's to be the best. So thank you for listening. Again, Suplex King from Colorado. We appreciate you. Please feel free to steal that and use it forever. We'll see you again later in the week, guys.